Welcome to Nissan Stadium as the TransPerfect Music City Bowl goes to the Big Ten's Purdue Boilermakers 48-45 in an absolutely crazy one here at Nissan Stadium in Nashville. Great to have you with us. I'm Vince Ferrara alongside Sports Talks, Jimmy Himes, and the sports director of 99.1 The Sports Animal. Jimmy, overtime against Purdue. I think this really surprises a lot of fans that were expecting a Tennessee blowout, especially with all the players that Purdue had out.
TransPerfect Music City Bowl did not end perfectly for Tennessee. I didn't see this game going into overtime. I thought Tennessee would be able to win it. Vince, they got off to a great start, as Tennessee typically has this year. 21 first-quarter points. They led the nation in first-quarter scoring. But as we know, the second quarter has been a big problem for Tennessee. It was again. And the other thing was that after that first quarter, Tennessee had a 10-possession situation where they only scored a touchdown and a field goal. Out of 10 possessions from the second quarter into late in the fourth quarter, Tennessee got only 10 points out of those 10 possessions. They really bogged down a lot, and I thought that allowed Purdue to not only get right back into it, but take a lead.
And Josh Heupel was asked about that in the postgame, and he said it was just execution. It was things uncharacteristic for them, but it really gave Purdue a lot of momentum, and actually Purdue had the lead at the half. And then the craziness, when it was 31-30, that's when the craziness erupted. And then a whole bunch of big plays on both sides. What a wild fourth quarter to get it to overtime.
What a wild last 5 minutes of that fourth quarter. Each team scored 2 touchdowns in the last 5 minutes of the game. Purdue had 2 60-yard touchdown passes. Tennessee had allowed 2 all year, and they gave up 2 to Purdue in that situation. So it was crazy what was going to happen at the end. And then, of course, Tennessee trying that 56-yard field goal late. They gave it a shot. They needed really to get a little bit closer to give Chase McGrath much of a chance to make that field goal at the end of regulation. But just a wild fourth quarter between Tennessee and Purdue.
Did you like that decision? Well, the field was wet. It was slick before the game. What did you think about the decision to go for it?
Well, I was okay with. Look, your other choice is what? Trying to throw a Hail Mary.
You got Cedric Tillman. It might work out.
Well, yeah, but they also had about 8 defensive backs in the end zone. So I don't think there's a high percentage on the Hail Mary, not a high percentage on the 56-yard field goal. I was good either way. Right. I didn't have any qualms about that. I actually had bigger qualms about why Jabari Small wasn't in the game in overtime. Yeah. Josh Heupel indicated that Small was banged up a little bit, and so that was probably the reason why. But, boy, he had a great game. He had 180 yards. He had a 61-yard run in that fourth quarter to set up a touchdown. If he's healthy, he's got to be the guy in there, not Jalen Wright. And Small obviously has got more power than Wright does. So I wondered about that decision, but the explanation was Small was banged up.
Short yardage continues to be an issue for this team and has been all season.
It really has been, and I think that's where you really miss a guy like Tyon Evans. I think he could have made a difference. Look, he was their best running back until he went astray and started missing classes and practice and ended up in the transfer portal. But I thought they missed him. Gosh, I tell you, another guy we really got to talk about that they missed was Alontae Taylor. Yeah. My goodness, Purdue did a great job of picking on a variety of people. If it wasn't Kamal Hayden, it was Warren Burrell, who had a number of pass interference calls. Tennessee had like 14 penalties, and it seemed like 5 or 6 of them were pass interference. But I thought Purdue did a really good job of exploiting Tennessee in the secondary. Some of it was Purdue execution. Some of it were breakdowns in the secondary by Tennessee. But my goodness, you give up over 500 passing yards. You give up 5 touchdown passes. They just torched Tennessee's secondary.
Yeah, Deshaun Rucker really struggled, the freshman back there. And, a great indication of how desperate they were is they slid Theo Jackson from that star to outside corner. Slaughter went into the star for Theo. And Theo said in the postgame that he had practiced that. So good for him to be prepared for that situation. But all in all, Jimmy, the end of the game, not to bury the lead, but Tennessee thought they had a touchdown once they went to the review in overtime. First of all, the decision, 4th and 1. You going for it in that situation for Tennessee?
That's a hard one. You kick the field goal and then you put pressure right back on Purdue, right?
Right.
I would have, if I had got Jalen Wright in the game, I'm kicking the field goal. I would have got some points and I would make Purdue score a touchdown to beat me. So, and you touched on earlier, Tennessee's not been good in short yardage situations.
Right.
And you don't have Jabari Small in the game. I take the points. I'm not going to rip them for that decision, but it's not the one I would have gone with. I'd have put points on the board to make Purdue score a touchdown to beat me.
Little counter to that is neither defense was very good either. So that I think was a consideration that we need a 6 here because we might be giving up the 6 on the other end. So, and then obviously they ruled him short. Then replay, they showed it in the stadium. He stuck that ball out over the goal line, but it was right in front of me, actually. They ruled that forward progress had been stopped. A lot of times on the goal line, Jimmy, they let those plays go. They did not in that situation.
No, they didn't, and his knee didn't hit either. And I wondered if the official looked and thought the knee hit, but when they said, we're going to review this for forward progress, well, hello, ACC officials, you cannot review forward progress. And I think what happened was when they went over to review it, somebody somewhere said, hey, knuckleheads, you can't review that.
Right.
It's not a reviewable play. So they came out and they said that the call was confirmed. It was a very close call. I thought he should have been given the touchdown. They ruled forward progress, and so that's a tough break for Tennessee right there. I give Wright a lot of credit for the effort that he made. And then I was told by one guy that's been an official in the SEC, don't be surprised if they change that rule about reviewing forward progress. He thinks that might come about in the future.
Yeah, and Steve Shaw told you on Sports Talk that, hey, they're going to change that rule about guys going to the ground and faking those injuries.
Well, how about this?
Yeah.
Post-game, Josh Heupel said the officials told him they need to change the rule.
Wow.
Now, how about that? Now, Purdue was faking injuries, but let's be real, so was Tennessee.
Yeah.
Now, did Purdue outdo them with faking injuries? Absolutely.
Yes.
Probably 3-1. But Steve Shaw said they're going to change the rule. He's not sure exactly how they're going to do it. I think that's a big deal. When you got the national coordinator of officials saying they need to change that rule, but here's the tough thing for Tennessee in regard to the situation with the forward progress. If they change that rule, that'll be the second time in, 12 years they've had a rule change regarding Tennessee playing in the Music City Bowl,
right,
because that North Carolina game back in, 2010 or 11, whatever year it was, they changed the rule there about North Carolina actually committing a penalty to their advantage so they could kick a game-winning field goal.
Positives, Cedric Tillman, 3-touchdown game. I mean, this guy, if he continues at this pace, Jimmy, he's going to be really difficult to deal with next year.
Absolutely. He was difficult to deal with this year, wasn't he? He had 56 catches in the regular season. With the bowl game, he gets over 60 catches. He goes over 1,000 yards for the first time since, I believe, Justin Hunter in 2012. So a big game for him. I thought that was impressive. And Hendon Hooker had 5 touchdown passes. That was the good news. I did not think he was as accurate as he typically has been. He went into this game completing 69% of his passes on the year. He missed some throws downfield. He missed some intermediate routes. He was not as accurate as he usually is. Heck, if he had been, I think Tennessee would have scored in the 60s.
Yeah, and a key 4th and 1 where he ended up getting stuffed, a handoff, or maybe a QB sneak, maybe it works out different. But all in all, that's going to be one of the big positives for this team next year. Tennessee finishes at 7-6. Just a quick summary overall of year one under Josh Heupel now that it's in the books.
I get what Tennessee said after, and I'll agree with this. Josh Heupel, the disappointing end. But you cannot say it's a disappointing season. For this team to get to 7 wins, for this team to set a school record for points scored in a season, they scored over 500 points this year. The previous record was at 484, set in 1993. For this team to do that, for Hendon Hooker to play like he did, for Tillman to play like he did, when you look at all the different individuals that did a great job with improvement, Theo Jackson among them, Matthew Butler was a better player, Jabari Small came on after Evans left the team. I really give Tennessee a lot of credit for turning what could have been a tough year and into a winning season. And you heard some of the players talking about that afterward, about how they kind of had to regroup. Things were not going well. The players acknowledged that before Josh Heupel came in and that staff turned things around.
Volunteers, after the 48-45 loss here at the TransPerfect Music City Bowl in Nashville, end the season at 7-6. A lot of records broken. We will talk about all of those in the days to come in the future. Want to thank all of our sponsors that help make our stay here in Nashville possible. So many of them, and if you look at the bottom of the video, we'll have all of those names, all those great sponsors listed. Tremendous businesses, and we hope you will support them. For Jimmy Hyams, Chandler Emerson, we will wrap up our coverage tomorrow morning on TSL here for 99.1 The Sports Animal. We'll talk to you soon here at 99.1thesportsanimal.com.